Hello, this is the 3 a.m. edition of the JK Show. I'm your host, JK. Welcome back to the program. Middle of the night. Just, sitting here, contemplating the mysteries of the universe. Have you ever thought about we take for granted that things are actually real? That the matter we see in front of us is really there, and that our experience is valid and worth deriving conclusions from? You know, some people don't assume that. And you don't really realize how infected by that you are until someone says, of course we all assume da 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 da, and you're like, hold on there, Sparky, we gotta think about that for a second. And then you yell at yourself like, what are you talking about? Why would you need to think about that? I'm here, aren't I? I have senses, don't I? This is real, I'm real. And yet here we are, all of us, thoroughly infected with lunacy. Absolute lunacy. Surely someone will tell us that the remedy for this lunacy is philosophy. Good philosophy as opposed to bad philosophy. And that's no doubt true. Doesn't mean we have to like it. Right? Bible people? Sola Scriptura. Well, I don't know about all that. I don't see that in the Bible. What? You know, if Jesus Christ is truth, then all truth is His truth, and it belongs to Him, and it derives its truth from Him. I suppose in another sense that could be obvious, but maybe it's not that obvious to you as you sit here and watch this earth-shatteringly exciting episode of the JK Show. Anyway, let's move on to talk about a few other things. First, baseball has gotten terribly interesting. You may have noticed that the Rays, no, not the Rays, the Tigers have taken a 2-1 lead on the Yankees in the American League Division Series. And the Rays, I believe, are they even with Texas now? That sounds right. And over in the National League, of course, Milwaukee leads 2-0 over Arizona. And the other clash, pits the league's best team, the Philadelphia Phillies, having finished with a record of 102-60, against the upstart Cardinals, who finished 90-72. Now that series is tied 1 game apiece, after the Cardinals pulled off a dramatic 5-4 victory, beating Cliff Lee behind a gargantuan effort of their bullpen after Chris Carpenter pitched on short rest for the first time in his entire career, spanning 338 starts, and he was not effective, pitching for 3 innings and surrendering 4 earned runs. But Mr. Lee, the aforementioned Cliff Lee, was not effective either, surrendering the 5 runs in 6+ innings, 12 hits, etc., etc. You may be sitting there in baseball obsession land, or lack of baseball obsession land, I should say, wondering what the plus means. I said 6+. Well, I'm glad you asked. The number of innings that they credit you with are the number of innings completed. So we can say that Cliff Lee completed 6 innings. The plus comes from the fact that he attempted to pitch in the 7th inning and failed to record an out in the 7th inning. So we call it 6+. There you go. Or 5+, or etc. on down the way. So that's the story on that. I was reading a little primer, if you will, on the philosophical thought of one Karol Wojtyła, and please don't ask me to spell that. You may recognize him by a more distinguished name, that of Pope John Paul II. I don't know much philosophy, but I do know that Cartesian philosophy made some errors and got a few things reversed, but it was trying to recover the objective reality of things from the clutches of subjectivism, and took a few wrong turns. But then Kantian philosophy, by contrast, posits an overriding ethical imperative, an oughtness to things from which people are supposed to derive some ethical system, but it has no impelling force, as though there's good and evil in things. Objective morality only, it would seem, coercive power. So we can see how that reduces to might makes right eventually, and Nietzsche. But terribly interesting that it was claimed by this author, Jeff something or other, that traditional metaphysics has some gaps in it as well, as to what we are able to know about ourselves as ourselves and how we experience ourselves. Enter phenomenology, and John Paul II neither wanting to capitulate entirely to phenomenology or take it too far, which would lead to subjectivism, nor ignore it entirely, basically fuses it with the older metaphysics. And it's true that I barely know what I'm talking about right now. That being said, but to know that the phenomenology or study of the person and as they experience themselves is not inherently hostile to Aristotelian metaphysics. nor the older Thomism, to which most Catholic philosophers owe a great debt. He is St. Thomas, after all, maybe the greatest brainiac who ever bothered to put on one of those little funny hats. Did he wear a funny hat? He was a priest, right? I don't think he was a bishop. He had some funny hat. Even John Calvin had a funny hat, and all he is a heretic. Then again, maybe all heretics wear funny hats. Oh, dunce caps. That would be a nice recovery. So, in our remaining brief time, let's talk about television. Dancing with the Stars tonight. I didn't watch it, but according to the judges anyway, Chynna Phillips did really well, and I'm enthused about that because, one, Wilson Phillips is awesome. Don't bother denying it. I know you'll look up the videos at your earliest opportunity. And Chynna Phillips, even after all this time, is extremely attractive. Which, I like attractive people. I am one. So I ought to know. So I'm rooting for Chynna Phillips. Who else am I rooting for? Oh, you gotta root for Hope Solo. One, same reason. Two, I love international competitors who battle it out on behalf of the old red, white, and blue, even though she fell a little short with her compatriots on the Women's World Cup team, she being the goaltender, of course. Still eminently watchable, and boy, if it wasn't for those little Japanese girls, we would have brought home that whole enchilada, as it were. They were small, fitting into tight spaces, and very quick. Very, very quick. What shall we say then? I have no idea. Piece of advice for you though. Don't do internet television at 3 in the morning. You have not much to talk about, and you start blathering on about nothing. Almost like you can fill up the entirety of 2 remaining minutes with very little effort. Thus it is. Nothing to add, really. We're about to hit the 14-minute mark, so maybe I'll take my leave of you. Perhaps I will. I hope you're well. Hope you read some good philosophy. I hope you pray. Hope you believe in our Lord Jesus Christ. And that's who I mean when I say pray. You could pray to a tree or something, but I don't think that's gonna work. Anyways, have a good evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Pardon for the terrible show.